Hello and welcome to the Varside Spurs podcast. And today I'm joined by Dan Staines, usually on Filthy Shambles with Spooky. Dan, what's your Twitter handle?
So Stains Spurs. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, good, mate. Lots been happening recently, so we're going to try and get into that and then look ahead to the season coming. A lot of positive things I think we're feeling at the moment. So it's sort of the eve of the new season and the end of the pre-season. What were your thoughts on the final game of the pre-season versus Barcelona, the sort of positive and negatives? And do you feel there's much to get excited about, or maybe you're being a bit deluded? What do you think?
No, I definitely think there's a lot to be excited about. I think that was performance-wise probably the best we've looked all pre-season. I just thought at times I genuinely I done a tweet yesterday saying, I didn't realise Barcelona now wear lily white because honestly, there was times in that game where the way we were knocking the ball about would have just been completely alien to us from last season. It was really great. It was really great to see, and I think that we started seeing some promising signs of other people being able to contribute to goals, at least when, if strikers aren't on form, the likes of Skippy getting a brace. So I think there's lots to be positive about, and there's obviously some negatives there. I think we kind of know what they are, and they've been consistent all through pre-season, which is just those defensive issues. But I think a lot of that is down to personnel. So once that's kind of corrected, I think we'll start to see improvements in that throughout the season.
Yeah, 100%. I think when you look at it, there's nothing we didn't expect, apart from perhaps, in terms of the game going one down early, that I dreaded the worst to begin with because I thought, oh crap, they're just going to open us up like a tin of beans with the with the defense we had out. But I think it just shows you sort of attack is the best form of defense sometimes because we really took it to them. A lot of the stuff that we've been promised we might see, we really started to see happen. I think maybe it's still a game or so short of being fully ready for the season, but it is what it is. There's, like you were saying, there is a lot of promise. There's a lot of positives there, and the defensive issues are one because those defenders, I think, are not going to be our first defenders. They are quite slow, but also not unexpected in the sense that we all kind of knew that one of the sort of teething problems of Ange's new system would be getting done over the top and or getting done on the break. And those were how those goals came about. Totally kind of really expected. That's why I suppose we've bought a player like Mickey van der Ven who is rapid and will be able to sort of mitigate for those sort of issues really by getting back quicker. But yeah, I thought there was a lot to be excited about last night. Even the B team led them for 2-1 for most of the game. When we brought on some of the C team, it sounds maybe a bit harsh, but that's when I think we started to kind of look a little bit disjointed, run out of gas a bit. You could kind of feel that about 75 minutes. We looked like we'd run out a bit of gas, but yeah, a lot of promise there, and it fills me with excitement. At least as you sort of seem to suggest there, we're not going to be watching that kind of turgid defensive style of football anymore.
Yeah, I think if you look at just this game, and not just this game, sorry, but literally every single pre-season game, I think we've seen a seismic shift in the way we've been looking to play. Our possession numbers have been right up. The amount of chances we create is, I think before that game last night, I think it was close to 100 chances we'd created in the games before. So I think that once that kind of Premier League match sharpness kicks in, I definitely think we'll be scoring a lot of goals. I don't think we'll have, I don't think that will be the problem of the season. I think it will just be a case of people gelling to a certain extent. It is still a relatively new squad and a way of playing, and even if there's players that have been here for a long time, they're all of a sudden there's people that have joined. Like the Celso's been here for a long time, for instance, but during his tenure, the likes of Basuma and Madison have rocked up, and they'll be people that he's quite simply not used to playing with. So there's just stuff like that that's going to continue to happen. But I just think last night as well, just the aggression that we were seeing from when we then don't have the ball and the willingness to get it back. Like there was moments when the likes of Solomon would have the ball and would kind of dribble, do a bit of a Lucas Moura and lose it through trying to dribble one too much. But he then would win it straight back because he's just and that was just great to see that we weren't giving up on anything. As you say, I think there was a bit of tiredness and some people were cramping towards the end that was just like leaving the floodgates open to a certain extent. But I think that, Ange seems to be getting into them, which is, great to see. I think he's obviously very forthright in the way that he wants to play football, or wants us to play. And I don't think he'll accept anything other than that, to be honest.
You think what he's done with them in what, a month and a half? We look like a totally different team. And you can see that we've got like we had under me. So actually, me and Richard got this kind of swear box thing if we say Pochettino's name. So I'm gonna have to put pound in that in a second. But if you remember back to under Pochettino, he had you could tell there was a style, that there was a way of playing. Under the last two managers, that hasn't really been that evident, apart from just sort of low block. But you feel that we have now sort of got an identity. I think everyone's going to know what our identity is. Sometimes it's going to work really well for us. I imagine there'll be some times over the sort of first half of the season in particular where it might actually work against us as we kind of start, before it all clicks into place. But, I think as fans, we'll buy that if we feel that there's clearly really exciting evidence that when this does click, it just, we're going to be onto something here. And I think we will do. I think, we've spent quite a lot of money, by the way. We'll come on to that in a minute. But we've addressed some significant areas. And like you mentioned about Maddison, look, I think Maddison is just going to be a phenomenal asset in this team. If Kane stays, which hopefully he does, he'll be licking his lips at the prospect of being on the end of some of his crosses. So actually, should we just, like, looking at yesterday's team, some of these will probably be first teamers as well, and we can sort of reflect on that. But should we just sort of go through the team and just see what you think, whether you think they're going to be around, how you feel they played last night? So we start with Vicario. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think just genuinely, I think he's not going to be a candidate for best goalkeeper in the world, but I do think he's going to be a steady enough keeper to at least be able to offer us what we need in our system. I definitely think he's someone who's more suited than, I think we saw that last night in Spades, where he's definitely more comfortable with his feet than Hugo was. And as much as, like, I think anyone outside of Hugo Lloris is going to be a downgrade in terms of shot stopping. I think on his day, he was the best, one of the best in the world when it comes to that side of things. So I think we will probably see a downside in that respect. But in terms of how we want to play, and ultimately he still is able, he's capable. He made some really good saves last night still. I think he's going to be, no different to most of the other kind of like decent keepers in the Premier League, if you like. So I think last night was quite encouraging for him. I think he needed that, because I think that some of the other pre-season games, people have maybe been questioning him a little bit. And that's just natural. That's going to happen when you've got a new goalkeeper and it's such a key position.
I mean, I seem to, like, I don't know if you were looking at Twitter last night, but they seem to cop a bit of flack from some supporters. I don't know why. Okay, he's at times maybe he's not making quite the right decision, but I think that's going to come. I don't think you're going to get a keeper. He's still relatively young. And I think, he clearly is going to be a really good prospect, really good player going forward. And I think we've just got to be a bit patient. He's got to find his way into not only our league, but our style of play as well. But, there looks like a really good keeper there. So we're just going to, like with a number of them, we're just going to have to be a bit patient. So moving on to Porro, what did you think about him?
I thought he's starting to actually settle into that kind of inverted right back sort of role quite well now, I think. He's actually done better than I thought he would do. I think even defensively last night, he was getting in the right position a lot of the time to, especially in the second half, to try and just shield the ball, see it out, nip in front of people, where he's got that kind of, I don't know if it's quite Kyle Walker levels, but he certainly does have that recovery pace where he's very quick. And I think that will get him out of jail a fair few times this season. But I just think he's so effective when he joins in with the attack. And I think that ultimately, as much as we could probably get, someone like Emerson Royale, who's more defensively, minded or secure, you would probably say. I think for what he offers going forwards, almost like but you are benefiting enough from that to have him there. So I think that, I think he'll probably be the first choice. I don't know if that's just going to be because of the amount of money we've spent on him. That it's a bit like, can you try and see what you can get out of this guy, because we have just dropped like 40 million on him. But
I
yeah,
don't know. I think I probably am leaning towards what you're saying, actually, that he'd be first choice. I mean, I think it's going to be very close between the two of them, and Emerson has done really well in that position. Would not be surprised to see him start the first game of the season at all.
no, I wouldn't. No,
But having said that, like you really suggest there, that the going forward in terms of the system we're looking at, Porro fits it better. He can learn that. What he wants is these, because they seem to sort of come in, don't they, the fullbacks, and create overloads. So I think he would be better suited to that. He's got a better cross, better eye for a pass. So whether that will just sort of gradually sort of, if you like, sort of metamorphosize into his position over a little bit of time, or whether he'll be in from the off, I really don't know. It's going to be a tough one to call, but either I think will do a good job.
yeah, I agree. I've been really impressed with Royale, and I think a lot of people should be. Like, I think he's come a long way since when he first joined. I don't think he's an extraordinary player by any stretch, but I definitely think that he's not really doing anything wrong, is he? He just doesn't do anything particularly eye-catching going forward, but that's not really a problem when he's potentially going to be second choice.
What about last night's captain, Eric Dyer?
Yeah, I think we all really like Eric Dyer,
Mm.
obviously, but last night was not a good showing for him. Unfortunately, I think he was probably responsible for a few of the goals. Just his sheer lack of, I don't know if it was the fact that it was a friendly and it was a lack of effort at times, because it literally looked like he'd given up on trying to intercept or tackle people, and the third and fourth goals especially. But he just looks so slow, and I
I
just
think it
think
just
that,
is.
yeah, and it's just
Yeah.
like, Romero isn't quick himself, and I don't think you could ever have a centre back pairing again of Romero and Dyer, because
No,
pace wise, not when you're playing a high line, the pair of them just aren't quick enough.
no.
Um, so
I think
yeah,
that's. I
it's
think
not a good showing for him.
I think that's the crux of it there, Dan. That the pace element. That's why we bought someone like Van der Ven, who's going to be able to be rapid and get back
Mm.
and cover. That's just not the quality that Eric Dyer has. He's a really good leader. He gives everything. He is not a crap defender, although he's always got a mistake in him. But I think for this system, he's just going to be too slow, and I think he'll be one of the victims. I mean, we may keep him around for a season because his contract ends at the end of the season, doesn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
He's a good presence. He's a positive person. I don't see that there'll be any rush to get rid of him, but clearly, he doesn't really fit this system.
No, I think I do think I mean, he should be allowed to see out his last year. I'll be honest. Like, if we're, I think that, I'm not saying that I've not been guilty of this. I think a few of us have been, guilty of being very heavily critical of him, especially for the last season. But ultimately, he has also been a brilliant player for us at times in other years as well. And I don't think that we should forget that. And he is someone that properly loves the club. So, I think we know it'll be the end, though. And he's a Premier League level defender in my eyes. I think he can play for other teams that are lower down the table and still make a good career in that area.
Yeah, and other teams that sort of play a lower block sort of style or anything,
Yeah,
something like
exactly.
that.
Yeah.
Sanchez really surprised me. I think he surprised everyone, didn't he? Really, I even saw someone late of this parish, and he tweeting last night that we should sign him up and keep him on for longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's no, thank you. But I do think we should get rid. But last night he actually looked really good at points. Okay, he had towards the end, I think he tired, he made a few critical mistakes. But that's probably the best I've seen him play for a couple of years.
Yeah, God, yeah. I mean, he was immense last night. I don't know what had happened, to be honest with you, because we've not seen anything like that sort of player from him for a long time. He was making last ditch challenges.
Yeah.
He was playing good passes. It was his all round game. But like you say, I don't think that we should be jumping too far ahead of ourselves. But I think that that last night is definitely a bit of a shop window exercise as well. You've got to think. So
God, yeah.
If he's someone we've been struggling to sell because we seemingly only had a bid from Spartak Moscow, which he turned down, obviously.
Mm.
If that sort of moves, that sort of performance last night in Spain gets the attention of a few Spanish teams, then we could see him potentially going out on either a loan to buy, a straight up purchase, or a loan, whatever it might be. He could find himself an actual. I would want him to get a move that's right for him, because I'd never want to see someone like him go to Russia. That would be horrible.
No, and he's a good guy. I mean, I know he's had some horrible stick from some people, but and we've all said, like in our WhatsApp thread, the guy's not good enough. Okay,
No,
he was decent last night, but one swallow doesn't make a summer.
no,
And he's but he's a good guy. I mean, you saw that recently where he put the Spurs jersey over the North London, his R's red thing that was in on this kind of thing he was doing, some kind of charity event that he was at. So he's fully coys. Um, he could be very cynical because I think the fans have given him a hard time, and sometimes in the stadium as well. But I think he needs a new challenge as well. But I wish him all the best.
yeah,
No, I don't hate him at all. I think he's given everything when he can. There's been a couple of times last season where it all went wrong for him. I felt so bad. I mean, he there was I forgot the match now, but he just got absolutely slaughtered. And
he came on, didn't he? He came on
yeah,
as a sub and got booed on and then booed
booed
off.
off. Yeah.
Like,
Oh, it's awful. I mean, that's terrible to see. I felt so bad for him. And then a match or two later, he stepped up to the plate, stepped in, did a good job, and he could have just crumbled, but he was brave enough. So I do wish him all the best. I think he needs a change.
yeah, definitely. Like when he first rocked up, I have to say, like I thought he slotted right in between
Mm.
Alderweireld and Jan, and he just felt like, wow, like these guys look like they've been playing together for ages. I think it was against Dortmund in a Champions League game that they just shoved him in on his debut, and you think we've got something special here. And unfortunately, like it just change of managers and lack of kind of backing of the current manager at the time, and there's just things different. In a different universe, that could have been gone potentially very different for him, but it is what it is.
Yep. Reggie didn't really make much of him, to be honest. He just seemed a bit of a non-entity yesterday for me.
Yeah, I thought it's one of those where, like, I think when it comes to the fullbacks tucking in, I think he actually quite is well suited to that element of he can play football. Like when he gets the ball at his feet, he can pick out a decent pass and stuff like that. But I think he's so defensively inept that he's just never worth having in your team, because you're defensively you're a defender down, aren't you? Like
Yeah, I think
you've
he'll
all of a
go.
sudden gone to a back three.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he will go, like you say. Another one probably needs a move to another Spanish club. Let's
Mm.
be honest. That will suit him well. He obviously didn't have the best time at Atletico, but he was injured, unfortunately. So if someone else is willing to take a punt on him, I'm sure he'll get a fairly decent move.
Yeah, he's another one that's not a crap player, but he just doesn't suit what we're doing. Skip, we'd kind of forgotten about him, but
Mm.
he showed up. He was like Pete Iniesta last night, wasn't he?
Yeah, I do really like Skip. I think like I do think he gets better. Like maybe not. I don't think he bursts onto the scene in the way that some young English players do, whether it's like a Foden or someone like that, right? Like he's not that. I don't think we can hold him in that level, of course, but he certainly is an extremely tidy player, and he's definitely always going to be one of those players that's good at doing the dirty work for the most part, and will contribute in an attacking sense every now and then. But
Mm.
if he starts adding to his game stuff like that last night, he could be a really good player for us this season, especially where you think we've got one midfield position up for grabs with Bentancur out at the moment, and you'd think Maddison and Basuma are taking the other two positions. So it's like Lo Celso and Skip and Sarr are going to be fighting for that third spot. And Skip really is probably almost like the most like trustworthy Premier League player in that sense,
Mm.
but he could also be the safest. So it's a bit like you don't know what you're supposed to do in that respect. But yeah, really impressive, and I think he can develop a lot under Ange, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and the way he was arriving in the box yesterday, I hadn't seen him do that before. I mean, obviously he scored the two goals as well, but that sort of late arrival into the box, and then scoring those two headers, I thought he had. Well, he surprised me anyway, because I never really seen him as that kind of goal scorer. I thought he was.
Mm.
I thought he was excellent.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I think like he must look up to players as much as we'll hate them, but he must look up to the likes of someone like Lampard and stuff like that, where that was what his bread and butter was. He was a centre midfielder that was great at arriving late in the box. And I think that that's just, if that's a skill that Skip could develop, not necessarily even to the same level, but if he could add that to his game where he's getting between 5 and 8 goals in a season, like that would be a really good season from Skip all of a sudden.
What about Basuma?
He was fantastic, I thought.
Yeah.
He just completely ran the game. He's been the player of pre-season in my eyes. He's perfect for that number 6 position. We all kind of called it as well. Like we said, he is going to be the 6 under Ange, and straight away he's played that position and we've not looked back. And he's going to be one where you've got to keep him fit as much as you possibly can this season, because I think he's going to be crucial to the way we play.
Totally different player to under Conte. I can't believe it. I mean, this is the Basuma we thought we had got when we bought him, and we thought we'd got the bargain of the century. And then last year, there were points where you're thinking, blimey, maybe this guy is not what we thought and could end up being sold or loaned out. But he looks phenomenal. I think he's going to be one of the mainstays of midfield for the first team for sure.
It just shows like how important having the right manager with some players is, though, doesn't it? Like, I don't know what the plan was last year, because I can't imagine that they bought him with the foresight that he'll excel once Conte's gone. Do you know what I mean?
No,
surely
exactly.
that they bought him for Conte, and he just never got a look in. And I get that, like, don't get me wrong, I get that these managers like Conte and Mourinho, they're very like demanding in terms of what they ask for, and they've got high expectations. And Chris in our WhatsApp was saying, like, I just don't understand these things, like lacking tactical understanding and stuff. It's like, he's a fucking great player. Just let him play and he will run midfields for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, don't quite get it, but more of that, please.
Yeah, I mean, it almost referring back to, the sort of debate about whether Porro and Udogie could ever be, because they're considered wing backs, could ever be, fullbacks. But they clearly they are professional players. They can adapt, and they have adapted.
Yeah.
And Basuma is showing, how this system really suits him. And yeah, I'm really, really excited about what he'll be this coming season. So Lo Celso.
I mean, he's certainly the player who's had the biggest kind of redemption arc this pre-season. I think we was possibly hoping for something similar from Tanguy, and we've just not seen it. And he's obviously going to be on his way out, and that ship has sailed. But I mean, Lo Celso just looks well suited to this system that we play once again as one of those number 8s.
Do you think we'll play Lo Celso and Maddison together?
I think we can in certain games. Like, I think if you think about like your games, I think you maybe need to be a little bit more reserved against like some of your top teams. Like I'm thinking your Cities and Arsenals and stuff like that. But if against certain opposition where we're facing low blocks and struggling to create chances, you just need more people who, he still can be box to box himself. He's athletic enough to do it, so he can do his defensive duties. He's not a shy player in that sense. So I don't see why we couldn't play the two of them. And I think that when you're playing more, defensive teams, you're going to need to almost, because you need to find ways to unlock those doors. And we've seen that under, previous managers, without naming them, that's when we struggled at times, was against those low block teams. We just couldn't figure it out almost.
Yeah, I again, as you say, that player is totally transformed from what we thought would, we're all saying pretty much sell him, get rid. He's not good enough. We're actually seeing the player that Pochettino wanted, and this guy has just not been suited to those defensive managers before. Under this manager, he looks the business. Him and Maddison, difficult to split them, really. I think they both look really, really creative. It was a lovely flick he did yesterday. I don't know if you saw that earlier in the game, sort of back heel flick, and it was just he just looks full of confidence, totally transformed. And I don't know whether they will play the two of them together, whether that'd be too much of a luxury, or whether they'll be sort of interchangeable. But but for certain teams, I think that'd be, that would be ideal. That'd be really exciting, especially low block type teams where you got to really try and pick those locks.
Yeah, but even if you don't play the two of them, and say you get an injury to either one, you've got one to cover the other. If they're quite similar as players, then you've at least got a bit of a, Lo Celso's like almost going to be the surprise package where we thought we were only going to have the one sort of really creative player in Maddison come through. But then if you've got the Celso who's going to all of a sudden excel as well, we've got two, right? So it's like, it's just, it's just a benefit we didn't know we were going to get.
Yeah. Let's move on to Solomon now. I mean, just going to say, I know he played for Fulham last season, but he just went completely under my radar. I had no idea who the guy was. Obviously, low expectations coming on a free, but he actually looks a real player.
Yeah, I think we've made a good sign in there, because
Yeah.
I like you, I'd not watched like Fulham week in week out, but I was aware that he'd been scoring a few bangers for him since he came in the January. I think it was, or whenever he came in, but the goals he was scoring weren't exactly like tap-ins either. He's like capable of like proper like decent curlers from outside the box and stuff like that. And I think it's good to see that he's a bit versatile in terms of playing left and right as well. Like, he's mainly been playing left, but last night he was on the right for a fair bit, and we're going to need that, especially if Son's going to play a lot, and you need rotation for Kulu as well.
Yeah, he's also got a skill set that a lot of the other players don't have. He's a dribbler,
Yeah.
and that, Mora sort of had it, but he just looks a couple of levels above Mora.
Yeah, I think Mora had it, but got lost as he was doing it. And it's like, if we can make sure Solomon doesn't do that, doesn't turn into that, like, he's still quite young, isn't he? Like, he's like 22 or something. So just, make sure that we mould him properly, and he could be a real player.
But that's the thing, isn't it? It's hard to get not get carried away, because I did this last season, and I suppose a lot of other people did. Last season,
we all did, yeah.
We finished really strongly, and I thought we were going to finish second. We looked like we'd improved all over, and under Conte, I thought we were going to finish second here easily, but it just fell apart. So I'm cautious about getting too carried away, but I'm going to get carried away. One of the things I think that we do have is now we've got a variety of ways, like, dribblers, creative midfielders. We had none of those in the last system because of the style we were playing. And at least now we got a number of tools in that sort of creative sense, where we could, if a game's not going our way, we can look at how to open it up with different players that I think are equally as good as the ones that are playing and on the bench.
Yeah, no, I think what we seem to have is a really good mix of player all of a sudden. Like, we've got really good variety in our tools, if you like. So you'd like to think that we're not waiting until the 80th minute to make changes because we're just trusting this rigid process. Like, I do think that we'll be rigid but in another way, but obviously we'll just be looking to stick to that attacking element and intent at all times, which is brilliant. But at the same time, I think that we've at least got people to try new things and different types of forwards and whatever it might be.
Richarlison,
I thought he played all right, to be honest. I know he didn't score, but I thought he played all right. Like, ultimately, I think when it comes to players like Richarlison, I just always think, like, when Kane's not playing, there isn't anyone in the world that replicates what he does. So, like, without, all right, maybe to a certain extent, the likes of Benzema and Lewandowski, but let's be real. Like, we're like, they're never coming to England and like all the rest of it. So, like, Richarlison for me, like, I think he's just a proper centre forward. You're gonna like proper centre forwards. They're never going to have lots of touches. They're always going to have like to feed off of like scraps a lot of the time if you're up against the likes of Barcelona. I thought he got involved a decent amount of times, and he was really unlucky with an effort on goal as well, where he proper spanned the defender with a nice touch with the outside of his foot, and then he just sort of absolutely smashed it with his right foot, and it just went over. And you think, I think he will score goals this season. Like, last season was a terrible, I don't think he would have enjoyed it himself. Do you know what I mean? I think he knows that it was a poor season in terms of output, but I don't think you can ever question his effort and his desire and stuff like that.
No, I agree, and I think at least you're seeing that he's not hiding. He's showing himself available. Otherwise you might be thinking, oh God, his confidence is really low. But I think it would just click at some point for him. So yeah, he didn't have his best game, but he was available. He played well enough.
Yeah, and I think as well, he's never scored more than like 10, 11, 12 goals or something like that. I don't know what his highest in the Premier League is, but he's never been a 20 goal a season striker. So if he's able to, if depending on how much he plays, if he's able to get in and around the 10 mark for him, I think that'll be a good season.
Yeah, yeah. Perisic, I mean, he looks like a completely different player. I mean, he's got a year left, but I'd be very, very happy to keep him.
Yeah, I don't know what he's. It's like he's in something out of a comic book where he's gone into some machine and it's made him 10 years younger. He just looks completely reinvigorated, doesn't he?
It's more his natural position as well, isn't it? I mean, let's be fair.
Definitely. Definitely. He's not having to do as much of the running up and down when he's in that forward position. And I get that we bought him as that left wing back under Conte because that's what he done in Italy. But let's be real, doing that in Italy is a completely different arse than doing it in England.
And he'd be perfect for, maybe if you get to a sort of certain point where a few of the players are blowing out their ass at 75 minutes, you bring him on and he's no loss in quality. I mean, he's a world-class player.
And we've got, I think you need to keep him because Maddison's obviously a dead ball specialist. Perisic is clearly a dead ball specialist in his own right. Like he takes them with both feet. Like there's not many players in the world who can do that. So I think that, if his contract is over at the end of this coming season anyway, you might as well just try and keep him for the remainder of that season. And I think he'll enjoy it more than he did last year because he's going to be playing in a way that's much more suitable to him.
Yep, agree. So let's look forward to the new season. But before we do that, are you happy with who we brought in so far, and do you feel like we're ready for the season?
I think we are probably we for the amount of games we're going to be playing, and I would say yes, we're probably ready personnel wise. I think that if you wanted to be really be really picky, I think that we could probably do with maybe another left back option in case the doggy was to get injured, because I don't think we should be trusting Sessegnon or Reguilon in my view. And also another centre back I think would be ideal, because if you could, you'd move out all of the ones like, say Dire Straits, but you'd move out Sanchez, Tanganga. I'd move out Davis as well, as much as he's a reliable head. But that's what I think is going to be stopping us from. I think Dyer essentially is what's going to stop us from bringing in another centre back this season, if you get what I mean. Just because the way the club operates, it's like they won't want to be paying his wages if he's not going to play, and you bring in Tapsoba, who is only going to play when Romero's not playing or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
So I mean, unless I suppose we do get a shot of Tanganga, which looks like that could happen. Rodon is apparently going to Leeds.
That's the other one. Rodon, forgot about him.
Yeah, and then if we get rid of Sanchez, that's 3 gone. So there would open up a space for another one. And apparently they've also talked to it's gone quiet now, but there was a talk a while back about, is it Cambiasso who could play left back?
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's an alternate option. I mean, Van der Ven can also play. He's played full left back as much
and Davis
as much
as
like,
well.
Yeah, so maybe that's what we go with, and we just stick with Davis. And you got Van der Ven. They're 2 players that can cover the left back position if you need them to. I'd almost rather Van der Ven than Davis, just because of his pace. Because Davis got slaughtered against Brentford last season in a back 4. So at left back at least. Anyway, so yeah, I think that's maybe where we're only slightly short. Obviously, but at the end of the day as well, I think I've got quite a long-term view with Ange, and it's like, we've never been. I think we've had a reasonably good window, to be honest with you. Like the fact that we've now got this centre back, and we've never been a club we've always been frustrated of not getting everything we need in a window. And when you think it's like a manager's first window, and it's a long-term project, then there's more to be added over time. Like I would expect us to sign another centre back next summer if we don't now.
I suspect
purely because Dyer's going to go.
There's going to be a lot of in the last couple of weeks, a lot of outgoings, and then there might be something opportunistic arises because, in terms of, I think I agree with you pretty much in terms of personnel, we're there. We've got what we more or less need. In fact, we're bloated, so we do have to get rid of some who otherwise just won't be able to register, and they're just going to be playing in the reserves or something. So they're going to need to find a club. But the only thing I would say is with the season, like the sort of pre-season hasn't been the best. Like we were supposed to play Rome and we ended up playing Lion City Sailors, and we missed one of the games because of the rain. And so I wonder if we're a game undercooked, but we'll see. Andrew said yesterday when asked about that, he just said, look, it is what it is. we have to be ready.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
think he would
exactly.
do what he can to get them ready for it. And we shouldn't shit the bed if it isn't the greatest result on the first game of the season. We just need
Yeah,
to understand that, we're going to have to feel our way into it a couple of games. Shame the second
yeah.
game is Man U, but at least it's at home.
Yeah, and as you say, like I fully expect us to get better as the season goes on. I don't expect everything because, but the thing is, you can look amazing in pre-season, but that
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean that's once we get into competitive games, we get to proper opposition. Like you all of a sudden, everything looks a bit tougher and not quite as easy as it did before. But I do think that we'll almost look sharper. We'll almost look better than what we have done because I don't know what it is, but as top level footballers, when you see him playing pre-season, you just see that it just has a bit more of a casual feel to it, no matter who you're playing. And as soon as you get into the Premier League games, everyone looks better and sharper, like because it's just that mentality and the intent and stuff like that. Um, and if this is a guy that we want to be our manager for a good few years, like I think people we we have regressed as a club in terms of expectations, in my view. So it's like we're not in the Champions League. We're not in Europe. We finished eighth. So realistically, the target is going to be top six. Let's be honest. And
Mm.
I think that means you're going to lose games. You're going to draw games. And you're going to win quite a few games as well. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think it's going to be like what we've been used to, where we win the majority of our games like easily. Like I think there's going to be a fair few fixtures we go into not knowing quite whether we're going to win or not.
Yep. Right. I'm going to hit you with a $64,000 question, and you've got to give me one word answer. Kane stays or goes?
Stays.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's like heading that way, doesn't it?
I just think, what is it? We're Wednesday now. The
Yeah.
game's on Sunday. I know that there's this bid potentially coming in, if there is a bid coming in that has been reported of 94 million or 95 million, whatever it is. In my view, if the club weren't accepting for £8 million difference, if the club weren't accepting the previous one, they're not going to accept this. And I
Mm.
just think as well, like if you've only got as a fan at least anyway, I couldn't care less what we sell him for. If he goes free next year and he ends up playing for Man United the season after, I couldn't care less at this point. I'd rather keep him as long as we possibly can.
I think he would more likely go to Real Madrid if that's the case, though. If he's going for free, imagine Benzema, it's Benzema, what I'm talking about, Mbappe and Kane together in that team.
Yeah,
I think I think that's, he's seeing that and thinking, what's the worst can happen? I'm going to get a massive contract offer here, or Real Madrid are going to want me for nothing.
yeah. I think because the Man U is the one that gets talked about a lot, isn't it? And I think that that's
Mm.
just because probably biggest club in England.
But they're
Like
no
you know,
further along than us.
no, I don't know. I agree, and I don't know necessarily how much better they're going to do this season compared to last. Like they could be
They've
basically the
lost a load
same.
of preseason games as well, and I know we can't read too much into that, but they haven't looked like brilliant.
No, but the thing is with it, you can't always completely dismiss preseason. It's like Arsenal last year, like they completely, absolutely smashed their pre-season out the park, and they didn't stop when the season started. So it was like, oh wow, they really have like kind of continued here. And then if with Man United, like they've lost all their games, but again, like we don't know if I don't know who they're picking. Ten Hag might be tinkering and trying things, and then it'll get serious when the proper games start. So we don't know. But yeah, when it comes to Kane, I think he will ultimately, you know, he'll go where he thinks is going to be best for him at the time and where he thinks he's going to win when it comes to next summer, I think.
Okay, so let's look forward to the new season. We'll do the prediction as well. What are you most looking forward to for the season? And if you were to sort of nail your colours to the mast, what do you think we will achieve?
I do think we'll get top six. I don't know if we'll get the Champions League spot in top five now, but I think that we can have a fun season. I think that we can have the way we play. I think we can have a relatively decent cup run as well. How far that goes, I've not got any clue at this stage. I mean, realistically, I don't see why you couldn't get to like a semi-final or something like that, and then see where you go from there. Just because I think that's all about the draw that you get anyway. But when I say that, I'm thinking definitely like in a League Cup sense and possibly FA Cup. But I think the League Cup would be easier to probably get because there's just less games for it ultimately. But yeah, I think I definitely think we'll finish top six. We'll get higher than what we did last season. I think it will be tough when you've got teams like Brighton and Villa who are going to be better than they were last year. And I think Villa are going to be really good. Not necessarily to watch, but I do think they'll be effective and they'll win a lot of games
I think
under Emery. So we'll see.
I think that's right. I think the other teams have around us have improved, so there is that to factor in because obviously not only have we improved and we're playing a different type of football, which is going to take a little while to settle in. However, I think that even if you reflect on last season, there was a kind of sliding doors moment where we could have gone third and it just fell apart, and mostly because the manager just couldn't be fucked anymore. We and obviously Basuma got injured. Not Basuma, sorry. Well, Basuma was injured as well, but Bentancur.
Yeah.
I don't think you can underestimate just what that did to our season. We had Romero injured for a little bit as well, and just wasn't quite the same player after the World Cup. There were a lot of excuses, but I think that we weren't hugely off it. It just all fell apart. And I think eighth, not much is going to be expected of us. A lot of predictors are pitching us to be sort of ninth, 10th. I think we'll surprise a lot of people this year. And with the sort of attacking talent that we have, and if we can get the defense to click, I'm going to be bold. I'm going to say that I think we can finish fifth. And I think we will end our trophy drought with one of the two cups.
That'd be amazing, wouldn't it? Like,
Yeah.
how amazing would that? I mean, genuinely, apart from maybe the Champions League run to get to the final, like that would be like the best season in recent memory if we were able to do that, wouldn't it? Like, it'd be ridiculous, I think, if we were able to achieve that.
But I mean, you look at it. Okay, you've got a number of the strong teams up there. So you're going. I'm not sure. I mean, Liverpool fans are a bit worried about their team. I'm not sure they're going to be brilliant. They're going to be a bit better than last season, but I'm not sure. They feel like they're in flux. So okay,
Yeah.
let's count it out. So you've got right. City will probably win it again. I hate to say it, but Arsenal probably going to be up and around there.
Yeah.
I don't think Newcastle are going to have the same season. I think they're
No, I agree.
still developing. So, but you would probably put maybe Man U in there. And then it's anyone really from Chelsea to, us, Brighton, Newcastle. Newcastle, I don't think are as good as us yet. Brighton, I think, look really good, but they're still not as good as us yet. We just, that fell away for us as we last season, and only just.
Yeah. If we do what we're supposed to, we finish above teams like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So if it does go down, and it's got a couple of sort of things that fall into place for it to go down to fifth, but it can happen. I'd fancy that we could finish fifth with Champions League, and why not one of the cups? I think one of the things that Ange will do is he won't approach games like we had last season where we fielded understrength sides. No chance. He's going to go full tilt at those cups, I think.
Yeah.
I'd be amazed if he doesn't.
Poch never cared about him, did he? That was half the
No.
problem. Like, I think he did when we started to get some favourable run-ins and stuff like that. Like, we obviously got to like a final and semi-final under him, I think. But at the same time, he was quite happy to field much weaker teams in them. And I don't think that we have any excuse to do that when you think like these players would be happy playing twice a week if they're in the Champions League. So they should be happy playing twice a week when the cup competitions start as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to try and play this as a sort of message from Ange. We might just finish on if I can cue it up. Let's see. He's talking about the fans.
Fans are usually the best judges because they're the most invested. Experts and people from the outside can have opinions, but the ones that matter the most are the ones who are going to be there long after I'm gone and have been here long before I came. And they'll let me know how I'm going, and hopefully they'll see a team that gives them belief and hope. Hopefully they'll see a team that resonates with what they want to see in their football sides, and that's what I'm going to try and bring. And along with that, some success. What that looks like tangible wise, we'll see. fans.
You have to be excited by that, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, how refreshing is it to hear someone speak about not just the club, the way that he's spoken about the club, but the way he speaks about us as fans and how important we are and how much like he cares about what we think. And
I know it sounds proper football man, but he gets it, doesn't he? He really does get it.
Yeah, and it does just help. Don't get me wrong; it does always help when you've got someone who English is their first language, because they can just convey their points in a much easier way. Like, whereas I feel like when you get people where English isn't their first language, like what we've had for the last four managers, let's say, then it just doesn't, like, you know, they just don't come across in the right way. I thought Pochettino used to be frustrating as hell when his press conferences all the time, because you're always trying to just, is he just shit at English, or does he know what he's trying to say and he knows he's fully what he's saying there, and it does actually sound like what it is? You know what I mean?
I think the other thing that he's got as an advantage, he clearly is a motivator and a man manager and a he really thinks psychologically about the game. I think he understands what makes players tick, and he will go into a lot of detail on that. And from what I believe, there's a new book coming out on Ange, and some of the people that have been asked to sort of talk about him are not in the football world, but are so impressed by him, they use quotes about basically that it's the same sort of thing about man management, about leadership and all this kind of stuff. And he comes across as someone who clearly understands the game, but also understands leadership and how to motivate and how to and what's needed in terms of, like, not having people in your team that feel like they're hostages, that you need them to feel like they want to be there. And that's why I think where he will get, put the team together, have people that actually genuinely want to, as he said, get on the train and be there, for whatever destination that will be. I mean, he's talked about goals and targets. He said, actually, they're very, very self-limiting. He says, I want us to be the best that we can possibly be and continue to do that, rather than think we've arrived at our goal and that's it, and take the foot off the gas. He really understands psychology, and I think that's, as like you were saying, the straight talking, the fact that he does speak, English is his first language, does help, but that communicates really well. I mean, one of the things that he did at his other clubs, he got in translators because he likes to tell stories, and he uses that. And I think a lot of good leaders understand that you have to create a vision and ethos, and what you have to do is tell the success stories about your club, about what we try to do, and often that's done through metaphor and story. That's we understand that well, and it kind of resonates with us better. And I think he understands how to tap into that. And aside from the the incredible attacking football, that gives me a lot of hope in terms of that. This, for once, we have a man that really does seem to understand what it takes to make an organization successful, and wants it to happen. I think he understands that this is a big shot for him as well, and he wants it to be a success. I'm really, really looking forward to this season, and give me a few months and maybe I'll change my mind. But so far, allow me to be excited.
Yeah, no, I think we all should be. I think we've got plenty of reason to be. And I think that as long as we're a bit open-minded to the fact that it isn't, going to be all roses all the way through, I definitely think there's going to be bumps along the way. But I think, as you've said, it's much easier to endure stuff like that when you can see the intent behind it is the right way to go about things. And ultimately you've got someone who isn't cold. They're very warm in terms of their personality, and they ultimately seem like a good person that you want to obviously do good things for. And I feel like that in some ways helps us as fans, because we've got someone that we actually want to get behind, because he just have how he comes across as well.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I'll be like any other fan. I'm going to swing backwards and forwards.
Yeah, of course,
as we all do, because that's the nature of the game. We're emotional, and as fans, and it means so much to us. It's either doom or it's glory, one of the two. And but I think we have something to look forward to next season, and and it's about time. It feels well overdue.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, mate. I'm looking forward for it to get started now.
Right. And on that note, I'm going to do a quick shout out to Redemption. If you haven't got along to there, it's not just full of bearded people, as Chris would say. It's actually an amazing place. The people that own it, Andy, he's a great guy. Really into the community area. They have a fantastic sort of standard range of beers, but occasionally they're doing new ones as well. They're just really a warm place to go to, and it's always a really good atmosphere. It's never too loud because part of it's indoors, part of it's outdoors. Often the opposition fans will be there, and there's all very harmonious. It's never any kind of nasty vibes there. You haven't got those horrible queues for the toilets with sticky carpets and all that kind of stuff. If you can make it there, it's definitely a good place to go. And on that note, I'm going to sign off with Coys.